What if the Jedi found the alien? Let's explore the depths of this scenario in the video. Master Plo Koon steps onto the damaged Romulus Station, lifting his lightsaber for light as he glances nervously at his companion.
Are you sure you would not prefer to wait on the ship? It might be dangerous.
Nonsense, Master Plo. This is an amazing discovery, and I shall not miss the opportunity to record it for the archives.
I understand. But surely it is more prudent to wait until the facility has been secured.
And miss the opportunity to record everything firsthand? Not a chance. If you worry for my safety, then you are free to stay. But don't forget that I am still a Jedi Master.
Master Plo nods, and the two begin to press deeper into the facility. The power was out, but their lightsabers provided some light. There they see the grizzled details left behind. Whatever destroyed the station was not a simple accident. The hallways looked closer to a battlefield than a research facility. Deep claw marks run through the metal, while other parts have been punctured. As they push further, Jocasta slips on something on the ground. At first, she thinks it's a step, but as she shines her lightsaber, her eyes widen as she sees the floor where she's standing is partially melted. Pulling her foot back, she glances at Master Plo, and the two share a knowing look. The researchers in this station weren't just studying the nearby asteroid belt. Jocasta opens another door and barely suppresses a scream as she peers inside. Master Plo whirls and raises his lightsaber into the darkness, but while no foe leaps out to attack them, the sight they see is something worse. The dim light of his weapon shows the carnage as half a dozen researchers lay strewn on the floor. Their bodies are twisted in unnatural angles, while their faces remain frozen in terror. Huge lacerations and claw marks run across their mangled flesh, mixing blood with a sicky green acid that leaves the flesh sizzling even in this cold temperature. Jocasta places a hand over her mouth as the scent of burnt flesh fills her nostrils. But the worst of these poor souls is a pair of bodies whose chests have been ripped open. Unlike the others, their chests were opened from within. Jocasta feels a shiver run down her spine as she realizes what it means. Something had been inside them. Something had torn its way out. Plo Koon is grateful for his mask, which filters out the scent, but nothing prepared him for the gore around him. He circles the room, looking for any signs of the attacker, but a faint light catches his attention. In the hands of one of the researchers is a blood-stained datapad. Although almost entirely smeared in blood and sparking slightly, it is still functional, and Master Plo gingerly plucks it from the dead man's grasp. Master Jocasta steps beside him and scans the contents for anything useful. Most of the files are corrupted, but there is a journal that explores how the researchers were tasked with studying a clutch of eggs discovered in wild space. The author has recorded his excitement at the potentially new species. Many of the other pages are corrupted, and when the journal does start working again, there is a drastic change in tone. The final entries were frantic, almost incoherent, describing how the eggs had hatched, unleashing horrors that had quickly overrun the facility. The researchers' final words were a desperate remark that the creature was right outside, warning anyone about the dangers they just unleashed. A low shriek ripples from the ship, bouncing across the walls. It sounds too far away from them to determine where it is, but one thing is clear: there is something there.
They're still here, Master Plo. We cannot allow them to escape.
Agreed. But first we must find the incubator where the eggs were stored. Hopefully there is more information there.
Jocasta nods, steeling herself for what lays ahead. She tightens her grip on her lightsaber, the familiar weight of it giving her some comfort. Together, they move towards the door and back out, hoping they're ready to face the terrors outside. As they move deeper into Romulus Station, the atmosphere grows more sinister as the darkness closes around them. No matter where they go, the skittering is never far behind, sometimes sounding as though it's right above them or under their feet. Sometimes it's just around the corner or behind the walls. But each time they investigate, they find nothing. The only thing to ensure Jocasta that she's not going mad is the occasional shriek that rips through the air. But even that sound remains elusive, despite how close it feels. They wonder whether this creature might possess some sort of camouflage abilities. After another failed and empty investigation, Master Plo pauses and extends his hand towards the corridor, using the Force to sense the creature through the darkness. He concentrates, pushing his power into this search, but then feels nothing. He tries again, but feels no presence beyond. Although he tells himself that the creatures might not be there, he wonders whether this creature is immune to the Force. He's heard of creatures created by the Sith with such power. Rather than dwell on these disturbing possibilities, he continues to press forward, leading the way until they reach the incubator. The room is in shambles, just like the rest of the station. The stasis chambers lining the walls have been shattered, and at the center of the room is a circular table containing the remains of the egg-like objects. There are 6 of them, all hatched, all but one. This single egg appears large, with its top slightly crowned. Jocasta steps closer, her eyes narrowing as she inspects it. The surface is smooth, glistening in the dim light. It doesn't move or show any signs of life. She hesitates, reaching out tentatively with the Force, but there is no response. It seems dormant, stillborn, perhaps.
Maybe this one didn't survive.
Suddenly, the egg splits open with a wet, tearing sound, and before she can react, a spider-like creature, a facehugger, launches itself from within, its long, spindly legs wrapping around her face in an instant. Jocasta stumbles back, her hands clawing at the creature as it tightens its grip, the tail coiling around her neck. Plo Koon is already in motion, his lightsaber igniting as he prepares to help her. But before he can take another step, a rasping growl reverberates through the room, freezing him in place. He spins around just in time to see a fully grown Xenomorph emerge from the doorway, its glossy black exoskeleton blending with the shadows, drowning out the light as it stands tall, with a cold, eyeless face. Its jaws click with anticipation. For a moment, time seems to stop. Plo Koon's eyes lock onto the Xenomorph, and he feels a chill unlike any he's ever known. This creature, this abomination, is not just a predator. It's a perfect hunter, a living weapon designed for one purpose: to kill. The Xenomorph hisses, its lips curling back to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. Plo first thinks about stabbing it with his lightsaber, but then tries something else. Instead, he raises his hand and channels the Force to try and reach out to the creature, probing into its mind to try and control it. For a moment, the Xenomorph hesitates and looks at the Jedi curiously. Plo exhales and thinks he's managed to wrestle control. Then, suddenly, the creature spins around and whips his tail out, sending the Jedi Master flying across the room. The Xenomorph follows closely after, leaping onto a ruined control panel as its tail snaps up like a scorpion. Master Plo catches a glimmer at the end of its tail and rolls aside just as it punches through the metal floor as if it were paper. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Master Plo rushes at the alien and slashes his lightsaber across its side. This time, the attack has an impact and sends a wash of acidic blood rushing across the floor. The Jedi Master winces as some of it lands on his armored bracer and begins to dissolve it. However, the Xenomorph is more angry than hurt and backhands the Jedi Master back and prepares to attack again. Its claws rake across Master Plo's side, sending pain jolting across his body. He manages to dodge the next attack, but the Xenomorph pounces at him, swinging its claws at furious speeds. Plo barely stays on top of him, dodging and avoiding each attack. Even with the speed of the Force, the alien is right on top of him, its cold, eyeless face never leaving him, peering through the darkness as its claws strike everywhere. Finally, he brings his lightsaber up to deflect the creature's claws. The Xenomorph hisses in pain and stumbles back, retreating from the room. Master Plo runs up to Jocasta, who remains struggling on the ground, trying desperately to pry off the facehugger. Taking a deep breath, the Jedi Master points his lightsaber down at the center of the facehugger and slides it across. He listens as the creature hisses in pain, its tentacles flailing wildly but no longer clinging to the elderly Jedi's face. Finally, its tail loosens as Master Plo uses the Force to rip it from Jocasta, pulling all drops of the acidic blood with it as he tosses it across the stasis chamber, where it drops to the ground, tentacles coiling close to its dying body. Plo helps Jocasta to her feet.
Are you all right?
I think so. It seemed like it was trying to crush the life out of me. I could hardly breathe.
We cannot remain here. We must get to the ship before these creatures do.
But from the halls, another cry reverberates across the ship from the injured Xenomorph. Instead of a pained shriek or a death shout, this sound remains strong and commanding, like it's calling the rest of its brood.
Quickly, before it calls for help.
The pair rush at the injured Xenomorph, but it snarls defiantly. As they swing their lightsabers, it leaps onto the ceiling, letting their blades pass harmlessly as it swings its tail at them. Master Plo ducks under the attack, but Jocasta feels it slice across her arm. She gasps as the tail doesn't pull back entirely, but wraps around her, starting to lift her off the ground. As it tightens its grip, Plo slices the tail at the base, dropping Jocasta to the ground. He redirects the acid away from her, but this gives the alien a chance to drop down on Plo, snarling defiantly as its claws start to dig into his chest. He feels the acidic breath dripping from its mouth and the heat brushing against his face, but then the pressure against his body ceases as the alien slams against the wall. Jocasta is on her feet and uses the Force to slam a piece of the metalled wall against the alien, pinning him down. As Master Plo gets up, the Xenomorph opens its mouth and its inner jaw snaps out, grabbing him by the gauntlet. He tries to pull back, but the creature's grip is relentless. Thinking quickly, he brings his lightsaber up and slices it across the jaw, leaving acid spraying everything as the alien retracts its ruined second mouth. Rather than give it a chance to recover, Jocasta rushes up and drives her lightsaber into its mouth, pushing it deep until the Xenomorph stops struggling.
We must get to the ship. We cannot let these things off the station.
The two Jedi waste no time hurrying back through the station's labyrinthian controls. Behind them is the growing cacophony of the Xenomorphs, their shrieks and skittering sounds growing closer, more numerous. Master Plo can feel them closing in, their presence a constant gnawing dread at the edge of his senses. He has faced countless dangers in his life, but nothing like this. The Xenomorphs are unlike any enemy he's ever encountered. He'd never encountered anything like this before. Although he managed to defeat one of the creatures earlier, the memory replays in his mind. The fear is there, creeping into his thoughts. He knows he cannot allow them to escape. The galaxy would be at risk if these creatures ever made it beyond Romulus Station. But the thought of facing them again leaves a primal fear in his mind. By the time they reach the hangar, the ship is crawling with Xenomorphs. Literally. Their sleek black forms slithering over the hull, their claws scraping against the metal. Plo Koon counts 4 of them in total. As soon as the aliens notice the 2 Jedi, they scatter into the shadows, leaving only the oppressive darkness in their way, and that incessant skittering. It seems to grow higher and crackling, almost as if they were laughing at them. The Jedi cautiously move towards the ship, standing back to back as they search for the creatures. Every shadow is a potential threat, and with the crates, consoles, and wreckage, there is plenty of cover. Suddenly, the Xenomorphs strike. They leap from behind crates and from the cover of supplies stacked haphazardly around the hangar, their movements as swift as striking vipers. Plo Koon barely has time to raise his lightsaber before one of the creatures is upon him, its inner jaw snapping inches from his face. He slashes it away with a swift strike, but another xenomorph pounces from behind, forcing him to spin and parry in a flurry of movement. Before he can engage either of them, they both disappear into the shadows. Jocasta fights beside him, her lightsaber cutting through the darkness as she deflects another creature's attacks. But the xenomorphs are cunning, using the terrain to their advantage. They disappear into the shadows, only to reappear from unexpected angles, each time pushing the two Jedi further to their limits. Their coordination is almost unnatural.
We can't keep this up. I'll get to the ship and activate the self-destruct. Buy me some time.
Go. I'll hold them off.
Jocasta sprints towards the ship as she dashes through the open hatch and into the cockpit. The controls are still functional, and she begins the sequence for the ship's self-destruct. Meanwhile, outside the ship, Plo Koon fights with everything he has, his lightsaber flashing through the darkness, briefly shining some light in front of him, but it rarely ever manages to strike at the alien's exoskeleton. The xenomorphs are relentless, and every time he pushes one back, another one comes in at him from a different angle. His lightsaber does little more than illuminate their snarling mouths or vicious claws as they come at him. He can feel himself tiring, the strain of combat taking its toll. Suddenly, the hatch to the ship opens, and Jocasta stumbles out, her face contorted in pain. Plo Koon's eyes widen in horror as she collapses to the ground, clutching her chest.
Master Jocasta!
Before he can reach her, she screams in agony. Plo watches, helpless, as her chest convulses, and then, with a sickening crack, a small, blood-soaked creature bursts from her ribcage, a chest-burster. It writhes and shrieks, covered in blood and gore, before slithering out of her broken body. Plo Koon's mind reels with shock and grief at the sight of Jocasta's lifeless body, and the monstrosity that emerged from it is almost too much to bear. The horror of the moment overwhelms him, and in his desperation, he unleashes a powerful burst of Force judgment. Bolts of crackling golden energy shoot from his fingertips, striking the xenomorphs with full fury of his rage and sorrow. The aliens are momentarily stunned, recoiling from the intensity of the attack, their shrieks filling the hangar. The ship's countdown reaches its final moments, the alarms blaring a warning that there is no turning back. He forces himself to his feet, still shaking from the confrontation, and sprints towards the exit. The ship detonates in a massive explosion, the force of the blast knocking him off his feet. The shockwave passes. Plo Koon pulls himself up, staring at the inferno where the hangar once stood. The ship, the xenomorphs, and Jocasta. Everything is gone, consumed by the fire. But he can leave nothing to chance. After seeing how relentless and resourceful those creatures are, he can leave nothing to chance. This entire station must be destroyed. As Master Plo makes his way through the ship, the silence becomes deafening, but it is almost welcoming, a twisted confirmation that they are indeed dead. He welcomes the quiet, though the eerie tranquility gnaws at the edge of his mind as he welcomes the darkness. But there is no time to dwell on these thoughts. He reaches the reactor, its controls still glowing faintly in the dark. The ship must be destroyed completely, and with it, any remnants of the xenomorphs. He begins the process of overloading the reactor. As he starts the final sequence, the silence is shattered by a sound that freezes his blood. A shriek reverberates through the ship, more commanding and powerful than anyone he's ever heard. It echoes down the corridors, a terrifying promise of something far worse than the creatures he had faced before. The sound reverberates through his bones, sending shivers down his spine and rooting him to the spot. He can feel the force of it in his very soul. Plo Koon frantically works to finish setting the reactor to overload. He knows he must get out of there before the creature finds him, but deep down, he senses it's already too late. The air grows thick as the footsteps grow louder, looming over him as a shadow emerges and rises above him. It was another Xenomorph, but one more powerful than anything he's seen. Her massive form looms over him, her elongated head crest casting ominous shadows against the walls. Her jaws part, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and the inner mouth snaps forward in a grotesque display of power. The Queen. Plo Koon raises his lightsaber, the blue blade looking like a pale flicker compared to the shadows he's facing. Then a thought runs through him, a chilling theory that this was the creature that emerged from Jocasta's egg. He has no evidence for it, but a sickening feeling in his gut tells him it's true. The creature opens her mouth and lets out a shriek. But this is more than a sound. It also reveals a powerful shockwave that sends him flying back. He realized the creature channeled the Force, taken from Jocasta when she hatched from her body. But the Queen does not allow him to recover. It bounds towards him and pounces on him. The Queen strikes with blinding speed, her claws slicing through the air, her tail whipping out with deadly precision. Plo Koon parries and dodges each attack, his lightsaber blurring in his hands, but this strategy cannot last him forever, and even with his defenses, some attacks get through. As he feels the claws rake against his side, the dark energies emanating from the wounds, weighing him down and sapping his strength. They don't just harm him physically, but chip away at his spirit as the Queen closes in. Plo Koon counters with everything he has, drawing on the Force to augment his speed and strength. He manages to land a strike across the Queen's chest, burning through her exoskeleton and drawing a spurt of acidic blood. But even as the acid sizzles against the metal floor, the Queen retaliates with a vicious swipe that catches Plo Koon off guard, smashing into the side of his head and damaging his mask. He stumbles, his vision swimming as the mask cracks, hissing as the pressurized air begins to escape. Even with life support, he cannot breathe the oxygen that was suited for humans. He takes a shuddering breath. The air is thin and barely breathable for now. The Queen senses his dread and approaches, licking its lips in anticipation, its tail lashing back and forth before thrusting forward. Plo barely blocks this attack, but the creature begins to push him aside and makes its way towards the exit. As the Xenomorph tries to retreat, Plo grabs a piece of rubble and hurls it at the alien, sending it sprawling. The creature turns around and then snarls. Master Plo's resolve hardens, knowing that he cannot let it escape. The Queen lunges again, her jaws snapping inches from his face. Plo Koon ducks under the attack, spinning and bringing his lightsaber up in a powerful arc that severs one of her arms. The Queen shrieks in a fury, her blood spraying across the room, sizzling as it eats through the metal. She rears, preparing to strike again, but Plo Koon is faster. He leaps forward, pouring the last of his strength into a devastating strike that cuts through her tail. The Queen stumbles, momentarily disoriented, and Plo Koon seizes the opportunity. Summoning the Force, he launches himself into the air, bringing his lightsaber down in a powerful two-handed strike that cleaves through the Queen's head. The blade slices through her skull, splitting it open, and the monster lets out a final ear-piercing shriek before collapsing to the ground, her massive form twitching. Plo Koon lands heavy, his body aching, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind him, the reactor begins to turn bright red as it overloads. The Jedi Master stumbles to his feet, his vision blurring as the toxic air takes its toll. Despite that, he manages to find some strength to reach the escape pod and blast off as the station explodes all around him. He watches it from his viewport and slumps against the floor, but his relief is cut short by a faint, skittering sound. Through his bleary eyes, Master Plo manages to see one of the facehuggers hanging from the ceiling. No, that cannot be right. They were all destroyed. But then he thinks back. He killed 5 of those things, but there was a clutch of 6 eggs. Staring at the creature, Master Plo feels a strange sense of calm.
Do your worst, for I am already dead.
Days later, Commander Wolf leads a rescue operation for the missing team. As his ships look through the wreckage, They find nothing beyond the ruined station until they find Master Plo's escape pod. When they load it onto their ship, Commander Wolf and his men pull the hatch open and look inside. What they find is Master Plo, slumped against the floor, the facehugger dead on his lap. As Wolf takes a closer look, one of his men points to the side of the pod, where Master Plo crudely wrote something with his lightsaber. The letters were clumsily branded onto the pod, barely legible for the clones. Destroy immediately. Suddenly, the Jedi Master's torso begins to wiggle. The clones whirl and point their blasters as a lump forms in the center of his chest, then begins to shake around. A wet crack, followed by a fountain of blood, spurts onto the clones' helmets, temporarily blinding them as the chest burster snarls from the ruined chest cavity of Jedi Master Plo Koon. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.